I've spent a lot of time thinking about youth in politics, partially because it wasn't that long ago, or some may even argue I still am a youth in politics. I entered politics, my first political campaign, when I was 12. And I did so with a tremendous amount of excitement and enthusiasm about the idea that I could change things. You know, I very much had an idealistic view. By the way, Elizabeth May has joined us. Good to see you. I see you up there in the house. That's, yeah. So, you know, I think back to that, and I had a very idealistic notion of what it was to be involved in politics. I didn't know a lot, but I knew that it was a vehicle that appeared to be a great way to change things, and a great opportunity for me to make a difference. Now, you can imagine being a 12-year-old showing up in a campaign office. You don't know what quite to do with you. You're probably seen as more babysitting than anything else. They had me putting pins in the wall. I'm still not sure what those pins did or what they meant. But hour after hour I did that. But at the same token, I met a lot of really fantastic people. A community of people who really wanted to bring about change and to make a difference in their communities. And I got really excited about that. And so I stayed involved and got ever increasingly involved until I ran at 19 and lost. And I was devastated. I was convinced I was going to win. I lost out to somebody else by 200 votes. I wrote off politics. I was humiliated. I was done with it. I was done with going to doors and having them thinking I was selling chocolates as opposed to running for office. I had a very young face, and so I'm not even sure that I looked the 19 years that I was. But I learned a lot in that, in losing. It's probably the greatest experience in my life. It's something that really stuck with me. And you know, the comment that was made at the beginning, you know, about not defining yourself, was something that stuck with me at that moment. You know, that a lot of people saw me as this 19-year-old kid showing up on their doorstep. Why the heck was I in politics, and why that I think I could represent anyone? And at the time, I was devastated by my loss. But the truth is that my own father at the time, before I entered the race, told me I wouldn't get 1,000 votes, that I would embarrass myself, I shouldn't enter the race. My friends thought I was crazy. Everybody told me I was going to lose. Everybody told me it was a bad idea. And it's because I think we often see other people as they are today. Not what they can be or what they're capable of accomplishing or what they could be, but by what they've already done. And we put tight boxes around them, and we typecast people. This person's done that, therefore they're this type of person. This person's accomplished this, therefore they're in that box. And it was hard, you know, at 19 to try to break out of that. At every single door, getting up to them and trying to get people to take me seriously. But it was only through action and later reflecting that I realized that, yeah, I lost, and it was tough, and it was hard, but I learned a lot. And that a lot of other people were willing to give me a chance as a result of that. Suddenly saw me as somebody maybe who could win, as somebody who could go out there. So why do I bring that up in a discussion about youth and politics? Well, I think there's two, if not three, fundamental problems that are big barriers to youth entering politics. I'll talk about one of the ones I face. Just not being taken seriously. That the reality is that when I walked into the campaign office, not just at 12, but when I walked in at 17, when I had lived and breathed policy, I knew it inside out probably as well as anybody, say except the candidate, that I was the first person told to go and do the grunt work. The last person to be asked about policy. The last person to be asked about my ideas. That I had to fight and struggle to be taken seriously in any kind of way. And so it's no wonder that a lot of people don't want to get involved in politics if their experience when they walk into politics is to be told, go clean the kitchen, go put up the signs, go knock on the doors, go do the grunt work. And you aren't asked, what are your ideas? What do you hope for your country? What do you want for your community? What's lacking in your life? How do you want government to better serve you? If those questions aren't being asked of you, if you're immediately being typecast as just another grunt worker, then you're obviously going to be, it's pretty hard for you to get excited about politics. The other problem, I think, is that we have entered into a time in politics where the discussion of the horse race and political strategy dominates our debates. And frankly, it isn't very engaging or exciting. You know, we in Ottawa might get really excited when a new poll comes out, or talking about what might trigger an election or what issue might not. But in terms of making a difference in people's lives and getting something to get excited about or feel that's actually going to make a difference in your life, It's not there. It really doesn't have any kind of relevance. And so one of the things we see in the United States with this huge surge of young voters participating in the process, I think is the idea that they're being sold something. They're being sold an idea. Now you can take it that that's a good idea or a bad idea. You can take it's a realistic idea or not a realistic idea. But the reality is that somebody was using hope to inspire people in place of fear. That often our politics is dominated by scaring people. Right? Don't vote for those people because they're going to do terrible things. You know, if you vote for these people, they're awful people, they're going to do awful things. How often are we asked to be inspired by hope and ideas and imagination of what can be? And I think that for a lot of people really cynical about politics, that's a really appealing message, because when I walked in that door at 12, I didn't walk in because I hated somebody. I didn't walk in because I wanted to get rid of somebody. And I didn't walk in because I even wanted to elect someone. I walked in that door because I wanted to make a difference. Because I had an idea that I could help change things, that I could be part of something that was bigger than myself and make a difference in my community, in my country, in my province, in whatever way that I wanted to make it. And if we realize that, if we see politics as a vehicle of change, if we embrace people and they see it as a legitimate way to reflect the kind of country and community that they want to have, a way of expressing not some cynical game that is played out between powers that are lost in their own battles, but a real way to bring about difference, then I think we're getting somewhere. And I think we'll excite them. And I think that a lot of people, not just young people, but everyone, will be a lot more interested in being involved in politics. And in that last comment, I think we all have a stake. We all have a stake because we have to change, yes, what we do as politicians, but we also have to change what we do as voters, the type of behavior that we reward as voters, and we also need a shift in the media. You know, it's frustrating when I walk out of the House of Commons and I talk about, when I was natural resource critic, a new strategy or new ideas that we had for an alternative fuel strategy, as an example. Or when I talked about the oil sands and some of the things that we needed to do there, that unless it was controversial, unless I was attacking somebody, it wasn't a story. Now, I can take the same thing, and in fact I told this story today, about what happened with Peter MacKay. And everybody remembers Peter MacKay and Melinda and the whole dog comment. Now, take that whole story and how that unfolded. I was in the House of Commons, and I saw something. I thought it was a minor issue. I didn't think a lot of it at the time. I walked out, I made a quick, I got asked a couple of questions in the lobby, and I walked away. And it happens every day. You walk out of the House, and Elizabeth, you know this, and you get asked all kinds of questions. A lot of times it doesn't get picked up. I turned off my phone. I get home after a drive home 3.5 hours later, and my message box is filled. And the story is the front page story everywhere. It's the lead story in every news organization, everywhere. You know, a comment that Peter made about Melinda, or, this is the major big issue. And yet when we talk about the types of policy issues or discussions about things we need to change, it's hard to get it above the radar. And so the most cynical things are the things that are held most to the fore. The last point I make, and something that I really think will help engage everyone, but also you. Well, maybe a second one. I'm not breaking my promise of not making a long speech. But the second thing is we've got to be bold. People, I think, are sick, and I think it's especially true of you, of policies and ideas that are just driven by polls, that are just driven by a cynical game to get 41%, where people are parsed and divided and subgrouped just so that we can get what we need to get our votes to get government, period. I mean, who's interested in that? It's no longer about big ideas or bold change or innovative thinking. Too often it's about following polling numbers, about following what particular direction is just going to get us the most votes for us, our party. And I say this of all parties. And I think that we've got to change that. That we've got to instead be willing to have the courage to stand up and say, this is what we stand for. These are ideas that are bold and big, and maybe they're controversial, and maybe they're going to be harder to explain than just a 30-second soundbite. But if we're really going to make change and difference in our country, then we have to be willing to put them forward. We have to be willing to have those debates. And if we don't put those forward, bold ideas that aren't just driven by polls, then why